I do my 3:30s on Facebook Live, I wave, and I don't know why. You would never see, anybody. I mean, anybody. Think about it. Well, you wouldn't see Katie Couric saying like, "Good morning, it's the Today Show." But I think there's an informality. You're in my house. You're in front of my actual real bookcase with my CD. Like, I have CDs. I have a CD player. I don't just have them. I actually have a player and I play them. And I'm going to lean aside for a second. I'll stand up later. This is a hand-painted chair. A fan painted this chair and the ottoman next to it for me. So I have sort of a homey, you're here with me. Everybody's like this now. The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon's at home with his daughter interrupting, and people are putting together their shows. But as a podcaster, this was always how I did it. I always and I have pictures. I look back. I started podcasting in 2015, and it was all audio until the end of 2019. And then at the end of 19, I said, I'm going to start to video. And I did 2 videos at the beginning of 2020. I did Hindsight is So 2020, which is already, the first part's already on my YouTube channel. And another brand new one that I did right before I took off for Australia 2 months ago. So there's always been an intimacy to the way that I interact with you guys. There's always been sort of a way that we do what we do that isn't formal, that isn't the news. And when I sat in the KFI studio, I felt, radio is such an intimate medium because you're alone in a studio with a producer. And you look at Twitter. I never took phone calls, but I looked at email, I looked at Twitter, and I could feel in real time how you guys were responding to the content. And now, it's energy. I'm not reading anything online. I have stuff up later for the chat, but in this moment, you're in my home. You're here with me. I'm here with you. I'm wearing a vintage dress. This is rhinestone. You can't really see it in the picture. Oh, look, you poured yourself a glass of wine. Yay. I'm wearing a vintage 60s, polyester with a little bit of side boob there in the hole, and it's rhinestone. And then and this wig, I'm going to tell you the story. I bought this I talked about a virtual road trip on my 3:30 this week, and I talked about New Orleans and how much I love New Orleans. And when I was a road comic, I always planned to show up and check in and take a shower and eat a healthy dinner. That never happened. I always ended up, in traffic, missing a turnoff, having people from the comedy club. It's so weird. We have phones now. I used to call clubs and say, I'm on the interstate, and this was like analog, like I had a map. I used to have this little map that you would turn a wheel and the distances would show up in a hole called the disto map. And I loved that thing because I could, turn it and know that it was this distance from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas. And then I had a book of maps, and it would go, you'd have the state, and then you'd have the city, and you'd have the little squares, and then the square would be highlighted. And I would call a comedy club and I would say, hi, this is Monique. I'm on I-70. How do I get to the club? What exit? And, some waitress would say, oh, I know how to get here from my house. I'm not at your house. I'm on the interstate. So, I always kept wigs in the trunk of my car so that if I had to go straight to the gig, this is it. Black dress, neutral lipstick, nice wig. Bam. Good to go. And it was always about being prepared. It was always about knowing that whatever happened, I was ready for it. It was always, I felt like I was a trucker, but I was hauling jokes. I was hauling levity. I was hauling happiness. I was hauling, whatever I thought people needed when I got there. And it was really about the movement. Comedy has been an all access pass to the world. It's been a nonstop 30-year road trip adventure. So when I started making a little bit of money, the wigs got better. And the best wig store for my money in the United States, there's some good ones on Hollywood Boulevard, but the experience is in New Orleans, Fifi Mahoney's. It's called Fifi Mahoney's. I believe it's on Royal Street, 90% sure. And I bought quite a cache of wigs at Fifi Mahoney's a few years back. And this one is called Tokyo. And one of the things that the pandemic has done for me is I've been in my home for Tuesday will be 8 weeks. 8 weeks that I've been in my home since I came home from Australia. And I've revisited myself. I've revisited what I like to call the temple of my familiar. I've revisited books and albums. I put my records in order. I found my original Candy-O by the Cars with the Alberto with the Varga girl on the front. And I found a Gato Barbieri CD that I used to have in cassette, that I used to have on album when you made out in high school. Everybody made out to Gato Barbieri's Europa, at least in Miami. So, when I looked at the stories, big Miami story this week, Don Shula died. That's a big story. And, Don Shula and Little Richard, like, talk about is that a bookend? Is that an absolute bookend? Don Shula and Little Richard. You have the winningest coach in football history, and you have, we still have the undefeated season. We still have the longest game ever played. And then you have Little Richard, who was, I think, one of the original inductees of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 87 years old. I used to do a bit in my act where I would say, there's nothing new under the sun. That, that the phone is, I would stand on stage and go, ring, ring. Oh, it's for you, Prince. Little Richard wants his act back, because Little Richard was an amazing musician. He was one of the original sort of, I don't want to say gender benders, but he clearly did his due and wore makeup and did his thing. It was all part of the act, and he was amazing. And as the week progressed and stories came out, one of the stories, and I have all my headlines on the iPad, and I'll look at them, but oddly enough, people forget that even in isolation, people are going to catch you if you do something wrong. It's not like police are not essential. Police are essential. Court is essential. People are getting in trouble. And I saw a story where a guy actually called. He actually called the cops. Right here. Here's the headline. Missing North Carolina mom is found buried on the property of the man who reported the disappearance, who is now charged. Like, I thought about this because of the nature of what a pandemic is, of people leaving their homes and investigating and, and looking into things. And the fact that if your daughter is missing, if someone that you love is missing, and, her friend, husband, boyfriend, when you call says, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. You just missed her. She's in the shower. Or, oh, she's taking a walk with a mask on. And I thought about, sort of how we have what we call wellness checks now. Like, if you're in Las Vegas and you don't leave your room, and this isn't new. This happened to me. I played Vegas. I played a comedy club in Vegas in the 90s. And because I don't like people to clean my room, I clean my own room. I hang up my towels. I do my own thing. And I would only leave for a little bit at night. I don't gamble. I don't drink. I don't smoke. So for me, Vegas is about pretty lights and, good, cheap food and reading. So because I never let the housekeeper in, and I was in my room reading most of the time, the third day I was in Vegas, the cops came and they, the hotel security said wellness, they didn't call it a wellness check then. They just said, we have to check on you. We have to come in your room. And I was like, okay. And I was, reading some goofy book. I think I was reading The Bridges of Madison County. And they came in and walked around, and then they left, and they realized I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't suicidal. I was fine. But how does that work now? If somebody comes up missing and you call and their significant other says, they're fine, you just missed them. It's interesting to me when I read this story, what stuck out in my mind was, why would he call to report her missing? Was he beating the punch? Did he think somebody else was going to notice her missing? There were so many components to the story, especially since in his heart of hearts, he knew he was guilty. Look, she's buried on his property. There's no doubt he did it. But you've got to wonder why. And you have to wonder, and I'm one of these forensic files people, how many people during this pandemic are going to go unnoticed in their additional travails, challenges, sorrows, pain. I have a friend, speaking of Fifi Mahoney, I have a friend who started a blog before I knew what blogs were, called Katrina Took My Mama, because his mother was in an old folks home that was flooded, and to my knowledge, they didn't find her. And I feel blessed that, as many people that are saying on the internet that this is some sort of hoax, and I myself don't know anybody close, personal, that has passed. I had a friend, a comedian, Edgar Rivera from New York, lost his mother, and I know him. So do I know someone that's passed? Yes. Are they close to me? Are they in my social circle? No. But I see something starting to happen. I see a phenomenon starting to happen where, people that are hyper existential, if I didn't see it, if a tree falls in the forest, if no one in my family is sick, all I know is that I'm out of a job. I see this sort of faithlessness, if you will, lack of imagination. When I was a little kid, people would always tell my parents, wow, that's a heck of an imagination on that kid. Because I would just dream stuff up. I had an imaginary life. I used to pretend I was married to Tom Jones, whatever. Doesn't everybody? And, when I got older, I looked up the definition of imagination, and I looked up the definition of faith. They're not very different. It's believing in something, imagining something, being able to internalize something that you can't see or touch. That in your heart you could potentially feel it, in your mind you could potentially conjure it, but it isn't real. And the backbone of our world is imagination. Albert Einstein said that imagination is more important than intelligence. Albert Einstein, pretty bright guy. We wouldn't have the device that I'm recording this on if Steve Jobs didn't have an incredible imagination. Sorry, I put do not disturb, but somehow a phone call came in. Was he a difficult person? Yeah. Did people love him? Not as many as you would hope. Was he respected and admired? Absolutely. Did he change the way the world works? Absolutely. Facebook was just, hot or not on the Harvard campus. Is this person attractive or not attractive? That's what Facebook was. And look what it is now. Imagination. 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 So as a species, humans love imagination when it works in our favor. We'll forgive all manner of, oppression and, Walt Disney. He was pretty much a world-renowned sort of genius, no doubt, but legendary SOB, tough guy in every sense of the word, cut from a similar cloth to Jobs. And if this week taught us nothing, it taught us that Elon Musk is out of his mind. He's completely out of his noodle. He named his kid a license plate. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I've read the explanations. He went on to Joe Rogan to explain how to pronounce it. But why would you give your child? Why would you burden them? I mean, it's one thing that Prince named himself after a symbol. Okay, great, whatever. But why, as a grown man who already has 5 sons with normal names, would you give your child a moniker that's a license plate? Okay, whatever. But, PayPal, Venmo, Tesla, imagination. So as a country, we love imagination when it works in our favor. We love iPhones. We love electric cars. But when it doesn't work in our favor, when we have to stretch our minds to imagine other people's hardship, to embrace doing the right thing, even though we can't necessarily see the reason, when we have a social contract to respect and fear, have a healthy respect for this voracious disease, for some reason, then all of a sudden it becomes all about, well, I don't really know anybody who's really sick, and I think it could be a hoax, and did we really land on the moon, and is it really getting hotter? Whatever. I don't understand, and I'm putting this out there. I don't understand, what difference it makes. How hard is it for just a few more weeks or a month? How hard is it to just wear a mask? How hard is that? How hard is it to stay closer to home? Maybe not at home all day, every day. I don't. I went, yesterday was my first sort of outing in the shelter in, and that I went to a farmer's market in Silver Lake that was very much, they had X's in front of the stands. They had the flowers and fruits separated. Everyone had to wear a mask. It was pretty careful. Nobody was taking cash. You had to use a credit card or Venmo. And even still, I was extremely careful. But it was lovely. I bought a fresh croissant, chocolate croissant, which I had for breakfast this morning, a baguette of French bread, which I ate about a third of it in the car last night, and some kimchi. I actually love kimchi. When I lived in Koreatown, I used to go into the restaurants. For those of you who've never been to Koreatown in Los Angeles, it's very Korean, and I liked it. I lived there because the rent was good. My apartment was spotless, and I liked living. I'd gone to Korea many times for the USO, probably a dozen times I've been to Korea, and I liked the neighborhood. It had a good vibe off of 6th Street. I lived on Kenmore, 5th and Kenmore. And I would go to Korean restaurants, and I couldn't speak, obviously. I would point. And, people like when you like their stuff. People appreciate when you energetically appreciate them and theirs. And the fact that I like kimchi, just for the record, kimchi isn't a thing. It's like pickling. You can have kimchi sprouts. It's predominantly cabbage, but you can kimchi anything. You can kimchi cucumbers, you can kimchi sprouts. So I bought this wonderful kimchi at the farmer's market in a jar, handed to me by a guy with a glove. And there was something about being outside in the open air, in the breeze, looking at sunflowers. I didn't buy any flowers. Something about flowers just seemed like right now I didn't need to carry anything extraneous or extra or touch anything extra. I was very careful. Very. And I did everything I was supposed to do. And I saw a lot of young people walking around Echo Park and Silver Lake, that neighborhood, without masks. or they had them and they weren't using them. They kind of had them hanging off an ear. And I saw a lot of other people, older people, let's say over 40, my people, and they were all masked and gloved up, with their own bags in their armpits. And I started to realize that, I'm sure we've all heard there's two kinds of people in the world. There's winners and losers. There's givers and takers. There's suns and moons. And I see that as this continues, that there's a rift. I said it at the beginning. There's a rift growing of, there's people that are taking this threat at this level, and there's people that are taking it at this level, and there's people that are here that are absolutely resenting everything about it. They're just, in the Bible it says, resist ye not evil. Resist not evil, meaning like, don't, if you're fighting something, you're actually feeding it. In the hating of it, you're giving it energy. You're making it worse for yourself and for the situation. And there's so many stories. I don't want to sit here and go through my iPad. I pulled a few, but there's story after story after story of, people opening restaurants and things prematurely and screaming at cops. And, kind of one of the positive stories of the week was that Adele has lost a bunch of weight. I love Adele, and she's lost 7 stones. That's how they said it in the article. So it was clearly a British article. Hello, 7 stones. I looked it up. It's like 90 pounds. Whatever is in a stone. It's a lot. And she looks amazing. She looks completely different. And interestingly enough, it made news how people reacted to that. They were, bought. It's the reverse fat shaming. Like, were you ashamed of being fat? And I realized that one of the things about this new society, the internet, social media, is that, back in the day, you would always hear you can't please all the people all the time, or you can please some of the people some of the time. I think, on Monday, I am doing my elderly neighbors giving back. Got to have that harmony and balance. Thank you. That's a nice comment. Somebody posted they were going to do their neighbor's yard on Monday. I feel like it used to be, the old, you can't please all of the people all the time or whatever. Here's what I'm starting to live by, is that you have to be honest and true. And honest is what I am with you. Honest is about me and you. And true is about answering to my own internal compass. One is us and one is me. Honest and true. And in that world, in the world of being honest and true, I feel like I want to wear a mask. I can imagine that this disease is very bad. I don't have to see it. I don't have to see someone struggling for breath. I don't have to accidentally make my mother ill in San Francisco because I was careless. My mom flew home 2 weeks ago. To be perfectly candid, I was in a panic before she got on the plane in South Florida because my mother, she doesn't have asthma. She has what's called reactive airwave, which is kind of like stress asthma. When she gets stressed, it's hard for her to breathe and her blood pressure goes up and she kind of like chokes, takes her a minute. She's got to have a nebulizer, I guess they're called. And she carries it when she travels because extreme temperature change, if she goes from very hot to cold or pressure, it's a thing. Let's just call it situational asthma. But when it happens, it's bad. When she gets an attack, it's bad. And I was panicked when my mother was flying home. Tomorrow's Mother's Day. We're going to talk about that too. When she was flying home from Florida. And I thought, you know what? I don't need to see it. I don't need to have anybody die. I can imagine. I've read enough articles. I have enough friends that are concerned that I feel like That's enough for me. If there's enough energy flowing through this situation, if enough people have made an unspoken social contract, if enough people have decided with backing of, Dr. Fauci or science or articles posted in a variety of news outlets, not just this one or that one, or this one leans this way or that one leans that way, then I'm gonna step up and agree with that social contract. Now, I've been researching a little bit about the Depression, which oddly enough, World War II really officially got us going. We were starting to come out of it, but, back in the day, wars were good for the economy. That's really not the truth anymore. And as I see this economy doing whatever it's going to do, there's a part of me that continues to surrender to the fact that we're not going back to something. There's going to be a new normal, and everybody keeps saying that, and they say it in a way that's challenging and frightening. And I don't understand why, except for the fact that I've heard people say that, if you laugh in a movie, that everybody loves to laugh. But some people do and some people don't, because comedy is subjective. However, if somebody fires off a gun in a movie theater, everybody ducks. Fear is a very powerful trigger. So I went back even before the Depression, and I started researching what I could find, sort of the psychology of the Civil War and what everybody says it was for and what it wasn't for, and whether it was to free the slaves or it was about money or whatever it was. And I'm not here to get into that. I was born in 1962. I have no problem saying that. And when I was a very little girl in the 60s, civil rights were not a given. The world has changed dramatically in my lifetime. There were colleges that did not accept African Americans in the early 60s. John F. Kennedy had to stand up to a major college. I don't want to say that it was this school or that school. I'm pretty sure it was in Alabama. And I can't even imagine what it would be like. See, when I talk about imagination, I cannot imagine what it would be like to be the first African American student in a school that doesn't want you. I've watched 42. I can't imagine what it would like to be the first person going up against that vibration, that wave of negativity, of intolerance, of the lowest vibration of human behavior. And what I find upsetting sometimes when I go through the news is the fact that I am concerned, and I don't think this started with the pandemic. I think the pandemic has brought it to a head. I think that it actually began in late 2015 when we were going into the election. And I think that, as a nation, and I said this today at my 3:30, but I told everybody I was going to dig in deeper. We very much need to agree to disagree. When I see people without masks, I don't judge them. I don't get angry with them. I don't say that they're idiots. I just keep my distance. Years ago, people used to say TMI, TMI. I don't even hear people say TMI anymore. Is there a such thing as TMI? Have we gotten to a point in our society where nothing is too much? I look at Instagram. Is there such thing as too much ass, or too much side boob, or too much, like too much? There's too much vulgarity, too many F-bombs. What is too much? And I say this because there's a need for balance. There's a need for gentility, for humanity, for compassion. And it's, when I was a little girl, we actually said, the Pledge of Allegiance, and we stood up and you put your hand over your heart, and they had prayer in school and they took it out, and I get it. Then there was a moment of silent meditation. I remember when it changed. First grade and second grade, first grade I went to Catholic school, but I went to public school, and I was excited because I could wear different clothes every day and not a uniform. And I remember from one grade to the next, one grade we had prayer. I don't even remember the prayer. I just remember it was like a pretty basic thing. And then the next year it was a moment of silent meditation. And in some schools, they had like the song of the day, whatever the song was. And I remember that the songs kind of started the day off. And there was one, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. I very much like that song. I'm sure if I wanted to, I could sing the whole thing right now. That was a favorite. And Michael, Row Your Boat Ashore. There was a bunch of them. And I was in public school. But the point that I'm making is that even if you think you're right, and I promise you, I understand what that feels like. Even if you think you're right, you only have to be true to yourself. You can be honest about how you feel about the other person's behavior, which is, I think it's not safe. I think it shows a lack of forethought or consideration. You're not entering into sort of the social pact. There was a woman who opened a bar restaurant in Orange County in defiance of Gavin Newsom, and the cops came and shut it down, and it was a big deal. There was a woman in Texas who showed up with armed guards to open her salon. And it could have turned into it's Texas. It could have been a shootout. I understand we all want to go out. We all want to eat dinner in a restaurant. We all want a waiter and waitress to walk up to us and not be wearing a mask and gloves. I get that. I want that too. And in some states, I'll have it. And I'm not afraid to go to those states. See, to be perfectly candid, I'm not worried about getting sick and dying. I don't want to get sick, but I'm pretty sure I would survive it. But that's not the point. One of the stories that I read, and this is an ongoing story, I brought this up a few weeks ago. One of the stories that I read that was particularly bizarre. So here's the headline. Texas bar owner, armed men arrested at business reopening after dramatic standoff with police. Headline, Michigan man in infamous photo shouting in police's face, unmasked gloves. He's unmasked, no gloves, and inches away from a cop yelling his face off. This story, White House blocks CDC. That's the Center for Disease Control guidelines, labeling them overly prescriptive. What does overly prescriptive mean during a pandemic? And why would you block CDC guidelines? Just tell people, follow them or don't follow them, here they are. You can understand, this is very interesting. I work in a Nevada brothel, shut down in the pandemic. Here's how we're getting by. I actually read a whole story from the first person written by a prostitute in a legal whorehouse, I guess they're called, brothel in Nevada. And she talked about the shutdown. She talked about how, they went around their rooms and they put everything in a plastic bins. Peace out. And she talked about how for a while she pivoted. She became sort of a cam girl, doing things on, I work as a full service sex worker at Sherry's Ranch, a legal Nevada brothel. A full service sex worker. I don't even know what that means. Are they partially, talk about imagination. I was trying to think full service. I'm going to let that go. I've been considering my options since mid-March when the World Health Organization classified it as a pandemic. So she's, some girls had already left and are traveling to work at other states. Well, it's not legal in a lot of other places. How does that work? And then she was saying that Little Darling Strip Club started offering drive-through peep shows. Can you imagine? You're behind glass and some dude drives up in his car and you do a peep show like 42nd Street in the 70s. There's the virtual girlfriend experience, which is being a cam girl. But as she went on and on, what she basically said was she misses it. She misses being a full-time sex worker. Like, this isn't like, oh, the pandemic hit and I hate being a full-time sex worker. Use whatever word you want. So I'm going to take this time to get an online real estate. No. One of the things she said at the bottom was that she misses, she says, sex workers will endure because we're hustlers by definition. And she said that she missed the lineup. Like, I didn't even know that really happened. You see it in movies, but evidently when a man shows up, if you're in the middle of eating a sandwich in the kitchen, they're like, line up. And they line up and people pick one. And during the pandemic, because of the nature of the questions that you're asked for your unemployment insurance, and I filled them out too. They said something about prurient or lucid or lurid, not lucid, lurid. But it goes on and basically says displays of a prurient sexual nature. You are ineligible as a business or as an individual. In other words, hookers and strippers can't apply for unemployment insurance, even though they legitimately pay taxes because of the nature of their work. Sorry, you're late. That's okay. You can listen to it. So what I'm getting at about that, and one of the other stories, let me get to that story because they were tied together in my mind. I get excited and then I digress. But one of the big stories, it's really more than this was a story I've been following, more than 370 workers. Now, when I say at a pork plant, and I say that the hooker story kind of reminded me of the pork plant, you know what I mean? Like, it's not what you think. More than 370 workers at a pork plant in Missouri tested positive for coronavirus. 370 people in one job site, okay? Here's the kicker. 373 employees at Triumph Foods in Buchanan County, Missouri, have all tested positive and, wait for it, are asymptomatic. So for all of those people who, lack the imagination that this is real and it spreads quickly and it can make a lot of people sick, imagine 370 people just passing the virus around like a little green tennis ball, and then they go out in the world and they're hanging out with old people and ill people. I have a dear friend who is a hairdresser in Florida, in Miami. Dear friend, best beloved friend, and does my hair when I'm in Miami. And, he was talking about, how long can he last, and he wants to get back, and, one client at a time, and you wear a mask and they wear a mask and all of that business. But at the end of the day, there's people in his family that have had enormous health challenges, big health challenges. And they say that if you're a cancer survivor, that this can really affect you quickly. So I want you to imagine, like the John Lennon song, I want you to imagine, as hard as it may be for some people, and I'm very grateful that I have both extremes of people. And I think that it's because I'm respectful. I have people that are extremely, let's just say, free-spirited. I don't even like the labels of liberal, conservative, left, right, voted for this, voted for that. I refuse. I refuse to politicize this as much as all the weight is bearing down on that and trying to make it that. And this is an election year. People are already panicking. Are we going to be able to go to the voting polls? What's that going to be like? Will it be safe? Will it be sanitary? Will the election be pushed back? Since, I mean, we already have the precedent of the Democratic convention being pushed back. I don't know why they'd push it back, because November is already cold weather, and if it's going to kick up again, you know, that could be when it kicks up. So what are we going to do? We're going to be in a holding pattern until next spring, summer? But no, we're going to have an election. We're going to figure it out. But then again, you know, I never thought in my lifetime that Disneyland would be closed for this long. And now they're saying it may not reopen until January 21st, till January 2021. Although there was a ray of hope this week, a big ray of hope. I had a long survey sent to me from Universal Studios, and it was a difficult survey. It was long. It involved math, percentages, and multiple answer questions. And clearly they were trying to figure out how to service people in a way that they would feel safe enough to come back. And they were, you know, I'm an annual pass holder to Universal, and you know, if we opened, and this is what they said, if we opened September 1st, how soon after September, they stopped charging. But let me also say that as an annual pass holder who pays on a monthly fee, they stopped charging at the beginning. I didn't pay for March or April, and I don't believe I'm going to be charged till the park reopens. They already told us that. But they said, if we reopen September 1st, how soon after September 1st would you come? Well, one of the things that they said was we would only allow 50% of park occupancy. We'd be much more careful in, you know, social distancing. And would you bring your own mask, or would you be interested in buying a $4 character mask, which all proceeds would go to charity? And I thought, you know, I'll bring my own mask. I don't need a character mask as long as everybody's wearing a mask. I don't even care if people tie a bandana like Jesse James. Just cover your mouth. That's all. Cover your mouth and your nose. That's all. But I read all of these, you know, cut and paste when people say, you know, cut and paste this if you believe what I believe. You know, and one of them was, you know, I don't wear a mask because I'll just be holding contaminated stuff in. Well, if you're ill and you're holding it in, good. If you're not ill and somebody sneezes on you, good. Like, I don't understand the mask. I don't understand why people don't want to wear it or tie a bandana around their face, or I don't get it. I don't. And then it went on, I don't wear gloves because I would have to take them off every time I touch something. Well, that's not the point. They're kind of a little bit like condoms for your hand, in that A, it's a visual reminder that your hand is covered so you're not getting juju on your hands. And B, you know, you take them off when you get home. Like, you take them off and then you wash your hands, right? It's not about, you know, not spreading contaminants, because let's face it, your hands spread contaminants. It makes no difference. Glove, no glove, glove, no glove. If there's contaminant, you're spreading it. What it's actually doing is keeping it off of your fingers. You know, there you go. You take it off. You can still wash your hand. It's not protecting, you know, you're welcome to wash your hands. All it's doing is, in my mind, reinforcing, you know, visual reminder, and B, you know, you take it off, wash your hands. The juju isn't directly on your skin. For the record, I'm not wearing gloves in public. If I handled things, I would. It's the same reason that your dental assistant, you know, the woman who hands you things, even though they've already been sterilized and she's just touching the end of it, wears gloves. And your dentist wears gloves. There's got to be a reason, right? They're not just doing it to waste, you know, gloves. So if you feel the need to wear them, wear them. If you don't. I don't judge. But I'm saying, and I said this last week, think for yourself. I'm not a fan of the cut and paste. I'm not a fan of people sending me forwards and saying, watch this before they take it down. Like there's some big dramatic, like there's not enough drama with COVID-19. Like this isn't difficult enough. I don't even look at the stats anymore. When I was in New Zealand, we'd lost less than 100 people. I mean, maybe there were more that didn't, that weren't written down as COVID, but we'd lost 100 people in the NBA shutdown. Now we're, 2 months later at 70,000 and still going. I mean, we're flattening the curve. Tomorrow I will be donating plasma to the local blood center. Good for you, Marcelino. But I mean, that's a lot of people to die of the exact same thing in a very short amount of time. We don't need any additional conspiracy and drama. We don't need cut and paste. We don't need, watch this before it comes down, or, the who did it or who didn't do it. It came out of a lab. I keep saying these things, and I'll keep saying them, because though the origin story, as they say in the superhero comic books, the origin story isn't the story. And it certainly isn't the story that's going to bring us to a happy ending. And maybe some people will have a happy ending and some people won't. And maybe there will be winners and losers. And maybe some people are just not going to accept that this isn't a sum zero game. For those of you who don't know what sum zero means, it means that there's only a finite amount. And if you have it, if you have the votes, if you have the power, if you have the money, if you have the say of when doors open and close, then, and I don't, then you win. Life is not sum zero. People need to learn the word and. If I'm right, that doesn't make you wrong. That makes me right for me. What I'm doing is being true to myself. This pork story, 3 weeks ago, I brought up, I think it was Smithfield hams. There's been 3 or 4 different meatpacking. One was a big chicken plant. Were meats becoming a genuine thing? I don't know if there's shortages because I don't eat meat. I eat fish. There's not a fish shortage going on right now. But I don't know. Maybe there's COVID people in catfish farms, but I don't eat farm raised. And I don't judge you if you do, because I don't eat a lot of fish because it's expensive. The way I choose to eat it it's expensive. But what I'm saying is that the pandemic itself is one thing. What it's kind of shining a light on, which is, hey, meatpacking plants are not an ideal job. People are crammed together, and I mean, it's not Upton Sinclair, it's not the jungle, where it's, we're in the book The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, which probably most of you had to read in high school. I think the motto is, we use everything but the squeal. Like, I think there's rules now, even if you're not keeping kosher, that you can't use like pork anus or whatever. Who knows? But it's not an ideal gig. It's still pretty yucky. It's still a pretty yucky gig, and that's okay. Again, the fact that I'm true to myself and I don't eat meat means, that's about me. But being honest in our communication, I don't care. I've sat across many a person eating everything, veal. That's between you, your fork, and your maker. And I very much can tell you, from personal experience, because I wasn't always this way. I really did think at one time that life was sum zero. I'm being perfectly brutally brutal with myself, not with you, honest, because I think it's important. There was a time that if a comedian got a great gig and I didn't, it bothered me. I felt like that they got something that I didn't have that maybe should have been mine. The 7 deadly sins, envy. And I think that during this time, it's important for those of us, and I know that my tribe is like this, because when you talk about you can't please all the people all the time, I don't try to please anybody any of the time. When I am true to myself and honest with you, then the right people come around. It's what I call, I tell people, your vibe creates your tribe. Who you are and what you project is what will reflect back to you. If you're surrounded by a bunch of liars, look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you cut corners? Do you always tell the complete truth? Maybe you don't lie outright. Maybe they're lies of omission. Maybe it's the old, what you don't know won't hurt you. Maybe it's that. But I have very much learned how to live and let live, how to let people be, in my mind, wrong. Whatever it is that they're saying, that I know categorically, that I can actually pick up an iPad and Google it and say, you're wrong. I used to be that person. I used to take tremendous pride in being right. And I was right a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. Hi, Evie. She says she loves my honesty. I have a very good memory, and I read a lot, and I'm interested in stuff. And I was right a lot. I am right a lot. And I always tell people, it's not that I'm the smartest person, and it's not that I know everything. It's that when I don't know, I don't say. That's the trick. When I don't know something, there's an Abraham Lincoln quote. I've been loving me some Abraham Lincoln lately. And maybe that's because there does seem to feel a socioeconomic divide right now. It's not just racial. It's not brown and black people. The fact that they're getting sicker more. Well, it doesn't take, I was going to say gypsy blood, but that's a slur. But that's what my friends used to say when I was a kid. To know that, yeah, if you're already in a stressful job and you smoke, and these are all proven. I mean, go through your minority neighborhoods. You're going to see a lot more billboards for booze and cigarettes, and now the vaping. And so if your life is challenging, and you don't have a fancy car, and you don't have a timeshare, and you don't have vacations to look forward to, and you've got hustles next to your hustle, and your peace, your relaxation, your joy is to sit on your porch and have a beer and smoke a ciggy, yeah. And I know this because I am a Latina female who grew up with plenty of family members who enjoyed, a regular Bud, not even Bud Light back in the day, like a Bud, or heavier, or, a Cuba Libre, whatever. They wanted a drink, and they wanted a cigarette, and that's how you rolled. I quit smoking going on 8 months. Good for you, Colonel Damon, or Call Damon. So, when I was younger, I grew up with that. I came from that. I came from, I'm right, and I'm going to show you I'm right, and I'm going to bang you over the head, and then I'm going to persuade you that you need to think like me. I come from very stubborn people. I come from a matriarchal, the women in my family are like praying mantises. I don't know what you know about praying mantises, but they bite the head off their mate during coitus. Like, I don't know it exactly by memory anymore, but I looked it up one time years ago that, like right when it's going, when they're having, when the praying mantises are getting jiggy with it, like the female will be like, all right, I'm done with you. And it's not like you need to leave now, or, put on your shoes and go. It's like, you're gone, you're dead, In fact, I'm going to look it up when we're done to make sure that I didn't give you any misinformation. By the way, the praying mantis can kick the snot. Talk about, prayer, the power of prayer. This new murder hornet we have. I think that's the name of it. Everybody's all crazy about this murder hornet. And, I have a video that the killer murder hornets, that's right. Praying mantises can kill. Like the murder hornet is nothing. Am I proud on some level when I say that I come from a family where the women are praying mantises? Yeah, because we can take down a murder hornet. However, I have learned that sometimes, would you rather be right or happy? Would you rather be safe or sorry? Would you rather be tolerant and compassionate and not have drama in your life? Or, I could go on. I can go on and on. But I'm going to look for stories next week. And I think that I've been, fair. I think that I haven't banged on anybody. You're killing me laughing. Oh, good, Dan. Was it comparing the pork factory to the brothel? Oh, I'm going to let that go yet again. It's just some jokes write themselves. But I would absolutely forgo being right for, being happy and peaceful. And more importantly, I will forgo being right for not injuring another person. I think in the Hippocratic Oath, the first line is, first of all or above all, do no harm. Like before you can even try to heal someone, try not to hurt them. Like don't bleed them or throw leeches on them anymore. Do no harm. I think that that's just a really good thing to kind of think about. It is protecting yourself or wearing a mask or, staying 6 feet away from somebody. Pretty basic stuff. I'm not asking you to wear, gloves. I don't wear gloves. I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not asking you to do anything that isn't part of the social contract. That's above and beyond. But I do see people that are, wiggling their way around the fences to get into parks and to get into the beaches. And, in fact, as soon as they opened the beaches in Florida, one of the last stories I pulled was that in Cocoa Beach, when they opened Cocoa Beach, the tourists and the locals, whoever, left 13,000 pounds. That's 6.5 tons of garbage on the beach. Like, what happened during the pandemic? Did people just decide, I've been cooped up for so long, it's 1972 again? I don't have to be careful. I don't have to throw away my like, talk about spreading. Who knows who's got, like, the poor people that had to clean all of that up. 13,000 pounds of garbage on the first day the people were allowed back to the beach. I'm grateful that I don't believe that's going to happen here. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that, and I'm not saying this from like, people in California tend to be of the fruit and nut and hippie variety. It's just the nature of Californians, but for all I know, I'm going to be reading a story in a few weeks that we left 14,000 pounds. I hope not. I hope not. First of all, above all, do no harm. I think that's fair. I think that's an easy request. And under that heading, it means, don't judge, don't beat up, don't send them a mean-spirited cut and paste. Try not to create any more divides than there already are. Try not to think of this as, a Chinese thing or a Asian thing or a created in the lab to bring us down thing or whatever. What difference does it make? Is that really going to change the game? If you can imagine a cell phone, if you can imagine an electric car, if you can imagine all of these good things, why don't we imagine that something good is going to happen on the other side of this? So there you have it. Love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can. So now I've got the camera turned so that if a couple of you want to ask a couple of questions, but don't feel like you have to. I know you were there. I saw you. And if I'm not good at it, don't be upset with me. I'm going to do my level best. Maybe I'll look on my iPad and see if something pops up, but I'm not seeing anything, and that's perfectly all right. My producer, Stanton, he sees all. And maybe I just kind of turned you guys off with all of my pork plant talk. You were like, that's enough, young lady. I'm going to look YouTube. All right. I feel like I'm in a 12-step meeting and Monique is the only one that shares. Is that good, Scott? Can I ask you a question? Is that all right? We had the same problem in Galveston Beach. So they basically just trashed it. Marcelino, a lot of garbage. I hate that. I hate that people are not, being respectful. You're a prayer answered mentor. Well, thank you. That makes me feel better. I'm trying to figure out how I can read if there are actually legitimate questions, but if there are not, or if I'm doing this wrong, being safe and protecting the ones I love and cherish, keeping the faith. Thank you. That's, I think that's the most important thing. All right, so here we go. Here's my channel, and I'm watching, and I'm live now. You are okay. So I don't know if this is happening in real time, but whatever you guys are saying, amusement parks won't ever be the same. It will take some time. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's going to be a long time before we can get back to amusement parks. It's a bad bug. Oh, somebody was talking about the murder hornet. Well, you know what, Stanton? I'm going to call it a night because I'm not seeing any specific questions, just very nice comments. And I think that I would rather leave it on a high than sit here and wait for a question to come in. Oh, my favorite book. All right. Thank you. Interesting you should say that. I was thinking about that. I have several, but I think if I had a gun to my head, I'd have to say Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I know he won the Nobel Prize for Literature for for 100 Years of Solitude. Great book. Loved 100 Years of Solitude. But Love in the Time of Cholera is amazing. It's fabulous. That was a very good question. All righty. Is it the cleavage? It's too much, you guys. Next week I'll dress more question and answery. All right. I'm gonna call it a day, Stanton. So I guess all I do is hit leave, and I'm out of the studio. Or do you kick me